Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sorry I'm a Bitch, the podcast for anyone who's ever been called a bitch. Hosted by Kaylee Ellis. Kaylee has plans this week, so I'm taking over. I am your producer, Hannah. So this is our origins story episode. I cannot do Kaylee's banter justice, so I'm going to switch gears and discuss the inner workings of our podcast. I'm hoping to answer some of the fundamental questions of who, what, where, and why, and all that makes us work. So who are we? Kaylee and I are friends. We've known each other since 2017, and we actually met in Austin, Texas on my 27th birthday. The reason why we met is because I knew her husband, Zach, before I met her. Zach was good friends with my ex, and Zach also played bass on one of my albums. So, actually my first album, which is nowhere on the internet, so don't try and look for it. Anyways, I remember before I had moved to Texas, I remember seeing that he got married to some broad down in Austin, and we were all a little scared because they had just started dating. And I'm not gonna lie, Kaylee, through the filter of Facebook, gave crazy. Sorry, Kaylee. But then I met her, and I realized she is the most chill, kind, real, funny human I have ever met in my life. And ever since that first encounter, we have been such good friends. We balance each other out. While we were in Austin, we did a lot of partying. Like a lot of partying. I remember one time we were at her and Zach's apartment, and they had this beautiful pool. And we were drinking, we were barbecuing, and we were also eating weed gummies. And Kaylee was like,
she's like, I don't feel it.
And meanwhile, the rest of us there are just high as fuck. And then Kaylee, I believe she ate like 8 more gummies. I don't know how many she ate, but all of a sudden we were all in the pool, and she was just sitting in the pool staring off into another universe. And now she's a mom. We're such different people than we were 8 years ago. But anyways, one thing that I've noticed about our friendship is that it's never boring. She is a bona fide yapper. And I'm pretty picky about the yappers I surround myself with. And she's one that I will never get tired of listening to. And obviously, I think I've introduced myself like 3 times already on this episode. I am the other, less visible half of Sorry I'm a Bitch. And while I do consider myself confident and outgoing and funny, traits that I also apply to Kaylee, I'm finding that as I get older, I am confident and outgoing in much more introverted ways. I quit drinking at the end of 2023, and since then, my meter for socializing and chatting has become pretty non-existent. Luckily, what I have found is that I love to create. I've always known this about myself, but since I'm no longer hungover on weekends, I'm finding that anything is possible. I wake up early every day and I'm working on freelance or the podcast, and then I have a full-time job where I'm a senior production designer. My slow days are 10 hours long, and my busy days are much longer than that. And that's okay. I don't have kids. I have energy and time. So here I am. I'm doing the thing. And that's kind of what this podcast is about. It's about doing the thing. Not just talking about it, but doing it. In 2021, Kaylee sold her house, and her husband packed up their very fresh newborn baby, and they moved from Austin to Indianapolis. A few months after that, I moved from Austin to LA. And after a year or so of long distance chatting, we started to talk about weight loss, making habit changes, and making healthy decisions for ourselves. I quit drinking and started working out. Kaylee completely altered her eating and movement habits and also started weight loss drugs. And as we continued to talk, we realized we both have this thing called food noise, which if you go back in time to all of our episodes, we have not one, not two, but we have 3 episodes about food noise. And that's when it happened. I asked Kaylee if she wanted to co-write a cookbook with me. Kaylee is an incredible cook, and not to toot my own horn, I'm really handy with design. And her reply was, what if we did a podcast? So in March 2024, we started meeting once a week. We had no idea what we were doing. Google and Reddit became our go-tos. We brainstormed episode ideas, how to approach marketing and social media, and who our audience would be. Without knowing it, we were also laying the foundation of how we partnered together. And originally, the podcast was called Food Noise, and then we switched it to just Noise. And then we were brainstorming podcast names. None of them were really hitting. And Kaylee made a joke and she's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm a bitch." And I was like, that's it. That's our podcast name. And I remember we both had this aha moment because if you're a woman, you've been called a bitch before. If you've been called a bitch, if you've been called a name of any kind, you know what it's like to be dehumanized by another human. You know what it's like to live in a society that views certain groups of people differently. The other thing we realized is using the name "Sorry, I'm a bitch," we are inherently taking ownership of the word bitch. By apologizing and also still being bitches, I can't think of anything better, honestly. So as we started to concept episode ideas, we realized that we were on the right path because not every episode was about food noise and not every episode is about, things like empowerment. Some of our episodes turned out to be really fucking angry because we're mad. We're mad at the world. Not only do we make less money than men, and we probably do better jobs than them, but we're also a part of a generation that has gotten our asses absolutely handed to us. My fellow millennials, you know what I'm saying. Without this becoming a full-on rant, having a podcast honestly is the best outlet for the feminine rage because we can just yap and yap and yap, and maybe some people will agree with us. Not to mention, gossiping is basically the best way to rebel and piss men off. So then when we first really started concepting episodes and the overall tone, we realized every idea needs to be on the table. Every step we took, even if it resulted in failure, was an opportunity for us to learn. Our first recordings took place in Kaylee's living room. I flew to Indy for a weekend, which also happened to be Kaylee's birthday weekend. Our setup was minimal. We didn't have lights. We were so nervous to film, and we didn't quite know how to have a conversation with each other while also being mic'd up. The camera we were using is a DSLR that kept shutting off after 20 minutes because most DSLR cameras, unless they're designed to record for longer than 15-20 minutes, they will just automatically shut off. Between being nervous, having technical issues, and having it be our first time ever recording together, all of the content we recorded that weekend was not good. And Kaylee can attest to that. So we tried again. Kaylee and Zach flew out to LA. We all drove into the desert. We stayed in a cute Airbnb in 29 Palms with a pool and a hot tub and beautiful views. We recorded everything again. And Kaylee and I agree, our recordings the second time around were significantly better than the first time. But there were a few things that we were like, you know what? Let's do it one more time and get even better at it. So we did. The first time we recorded Food Noise was in Indianapolis. It was no good. The second time we recorded it in the desert, it was better, but it just didn't have that pizzazz we were looking for. So the third time we recorded it was nearly perfect. The emotions were there. Kaylee was raw and vulnerable and real. But the irony of it is that my microphone wasn't working, and so it diminished the quality of that episode by a lot, which is fine. I'm over it. I don't even have nightmares about it anymore. But we kept it. You can go listen to it. It's out there in the world. Which I guess this is a good way for me to segue into our podcast equipment. And I know for some of you, this is like the most boring bullshit in the world, but I know for others of you, you're maybe a little curious. So this is for you. Okay, because I have a background in music, I had the recording equipment already set up. And my setup includes a Focusrite Scarlett 2x2 interface. I use an AKG C414 microphone. And for the workstation, and by workstation I mean the application I use to record the music into, I use Ableton Live. Kaylee, on the other hand, she has a Rode PodMic dynamic podcasting microphone, and she actually also recently bought the same interface as me, so we have the same one. One time we got this comment from some guy saying,
"Wow, they really need to make podcast equipment more expensive."
And what I have to say to that is, first of all, who is they? Who is they that is making the podcast equipment expensive or less expensive? I don't know. Is it a man? Probably. And you know what? Anyone can do this shit. Thank you, guy who commented and tried to bring us down, because you didn't, bitch. And if you've been following along with us since we started last year, you'll probably notice that some of our episodes have video and some do not. And let me be clear, this is because we do not know what we're doing. Honestly, every step of the way, we are feeling around in the dark. When we are in person, we use our phones vertically to record video. 95% of the time, though, we record remotely and we use a program called Riverside FM. Riverside is designed for remote recording. So you can record your podcasts, you can record classes, meetings, you name it. We love Riverside for the purpose of recording remotely. And what's nice about Riverside is that it provides you with a producer mode. So when Kaylee and I are recording just her and me, I'm in the producer mode and Riverside is only recording her audio and her video. It makes it really easy for us to edit. The only downside to Riverside is that it's just a little bit clunky. We do all of our editing either in CapCut, Adobe Premiere Pro, or as I mentioned before, I edit our audio in Ableton. Oh, and I should mention, if you know, you know, I don't professionally master our audio. I just use a plugin called the God Particle from Cradle. So you could use that for music recording too. If you don't have it already, you should get it because it's fucking amazing. It uses plugin magic to mix your master track and it's fucking great, like I said before. Okay, I'm done talking about equipment, and as I said before, we really don't know what we're doing. We released our first episode in September 2024. We were originally going to hire someone to edit for us, and when his rates came back a little bit higher than anticipated, I raised my hand and I said, I'm going to edit. So for season 1, I edited all of our video and our audio. And the workflow for this was way more complicated than it ever had to be. I did not know what we were doing. We were doing so many things at once to try and get our feet off the ground that I was basically in a place where I was just doing what I needed to do when I needed to do it in order to put episodes out. And honestly, I haven't had the heart to go back and listen to our first season because I know I will only be able to hear and see every little error in the edits. And at the same time, while I'm a little embarrassed by that, which is silly because like nobody starts a new endeavor being perfect at it, I'm also so proud of how much work went into the first season. We fucking ripped the Band-Aid off and learned so quickly that if you want to put yourself out there, you gotta go balls to the wall and you just have to do it. And if you're putting yourself out on the internet, oh my God, you have to have thick skin. And that's really why our podcast is what it is today. By putting ourselves out there, by trying weird TikTok trends, and yes, by feeling around in the dark, we seem to be finding like-minded listeners. Our friendship is growing immensely, and also we're really finding ourselves through the podcast. With every step forward, we discover something new. And one thing that we discovered at the start of season 2 is we needed to shift our roles a little bit. I made a decision to step away from hosting and move solely into editing and producing. And I have a lot of reasons for this. And I will admit, when we first started recording, I was very uncomfortable being in front of the camera. I had to practice increasing my confidence by putting myself out in the world. I started doing more reels on my personal Instagram, and I started doing some random TikTok trends. And I really did make massive strides in terms of my comfortability. Comfortability? Comfortability. Comfortability. I don't know how to say that word. Then came one fateful day. Kaylee and I got into our first misunderstanding. We'll call it that. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a fight. But it was definitely out of the ordinary for our usual agreeable communication. We were looking into a photographer and we just weren't aligning on how to approach a photo shoot. We had different ideas of how long it should be, how much it should cost, what goes into it. And I gotta tell you, I learned more about myself through this one little speed bump with my best friend than I did in a year's worth of therapy. Through this misunderstanding, I came to the very clear realization that I was doing too much. I was trying to be in front of the camera. I was trying to be behind the camera. Guys, the camera is a metaphor for the podcast. I guess I could just say that. I was trying to be in front of the microphone and behind the microphone. I was overwhelmed. My response to being overwhelmed is perfection. And when you want something to be perfect, it's very hard to collaborate with other people because your ideas aren't always going to align and your experience is not always going to align. And I knew for me, if I wanted to collaborate with my friend on this endeavor, I needed to step the fuck down. So I went to Kaylee and I asked her flat out, I said, hey, how do you feel about being the sole host of Sorry I'm a Bitch? Many of you probably understand this, but when you start a business, you wear every single hat because you don't got any money. And we literally have no money. So we are doing everything. We do everything ourselves, as I say in every episode. And in addition to this, based on all of our analytics and all of our social clips that have gone viral, Kaylee's a fucking star. I'm very literal. I'm very kind of when I record, I get a little mumbly and drooly. Kaylee just fucking yaps and she says funny shit off the hook. Her banter is witty and I love to watch it. And we talked about it. Obviously she was down for it because she's a team player, but we talked about it more and I was like, this is the move, girl. Like you in the front, me in the back. Just like all of our parents on their wedding night. Now that you have that lovely visual, I am going to try to wrap this up. So, long story short, Kaylee and I have been on a journey this year. We started something new that was completely out of our wheelhouse, and it was very scary, and it was super daunting, but we did it together. And I will not lie, there have been many moments where I have felt like quitting, where I have felt like throwing in the towel. And while I can't speak for Kaylee, maybe she hasn't felt that way, I don't know. But maybe she has. We're human, you know? The thing is that we haven't quit. I haven't quit. Even when things are stressful, even when things are difficult, we have not quit. And I don't foresee us quitting. No matter how many hate comments we get, no matter how daunting the task is in front of us, we're not stopping. We have real, tangible goals, and they're not just monetary. This podcast is for us to connect to each other, to ourselves, to our listeners, to the population of millennials living in this country, to women, to trans people, to queer people, and to men. We don't just want women listening to our podcast. We want men to tune in and to actually hear what we're saying. This podcast inherently is an act of rebellion. We are here to challenge the status quo. And while we have to survive in a capitalist society, we're here to find community with one another. We're here to shine a light on our experiences, which is the woman's experience, which is the woman experience. We invite guests onto the show to share their experiences, to gossip, to save lives. And yes, we have opinions. And yes, there are a lot of names you can call us. But hopefully it's a bitch, because engagement is engagement, motherfucker.